In this video we're going to have a look at an old 300 TDI cylinder head and see if it's worth salvaging. Well, I thought it was supposed to be spring, but it's just started snowing again. It's a miserable day outside, and also I'm stuck for exhaust clamps and things like that for my Defender. So I thought I'd get on and have a look at this little thing here. This is a 300 TDI head that Jeff dropped off because he said it was scrap and I was throwing my scrap bin. But I asked him, I said, what's wrong with it? He says, oh, it's cracked. Well, I'm not sure. So what we're going to do a procedure today to logically work out if a head's worth saving or salvaging. Before you start cleaning everything up, like making it really nice and shiny cleany, is to just clean up the face, and we're going to give it a pressure test. We've done this before, we've done it quite a few times, but this is a bit of a mystery because I don't know the reason why I took it off. So before you go down to the machine shop and have it planed and or faced, it's best to do a pressure test first, because otherwise it's a waste of money because it'll just overheat again. And we've seen in previous videos these heads can crack in the most unusual places, principally inside these valves here. They are very, very thin. So what I'm going to do first of all, I've got a block here, sanding block. I'm not going to face it off with this, but I'm just going to take off any high spots because we're going to put our rubber gasket on. Well, I suppose you could face it off with this, really. We just don't want any bits of gasket sticking up. Now it has got some nicks here. Well, that could be from being transported, but we could actually take this down and get it faced off. I can see a crack here and a crack here where the glow plugs come through, but I'm not sure. It could be wasting our time. So let's get the gear on and we'll come back. Right, so if you haven't seen this before, there's your head. That's our pressure gauge with a tap, so we can shut it off. This is just a bit of 10mm 3/8 plate. There's a rubber piece of conveyor belt here that acts like a gasket. So the thing is, if the head's a little bit warped, it doesn't really matter. So you can reuse this over and over again. And again, there's the bolts coming out. So I just use standard Land Rover bolts and just put some nuts on. Now you will observe here that this is cut out. It's not just a flat plate. And the thing is, if it's cracked anywhere around here, we can see bubbles coming out, whereas if it was just a flat plate, it might just cause blockage, should we say, for the bubbles. So we want to see everything coming out. So like I say, we've got it all fastened down now, not forgetting the one on the end where the thermostat housing goes on. Don't forget that, otherwise you'll have a lot of problems. So the next thing is we're going to fill this tub with water. Now I can't find my original tub, but I think this one will do. Oh, will it? Oh, I don't know. Wait a minute. I'll have to test it. Well, indeed it does fit. It's a bit tall, but now I'm going to fill this with hot water up to about here. Hot water so it gets a little bit expanded. We'll never get up to like 88 degrees or anything like that, but I'll get the hottest water I can. We'll leave it to soak and then we'll test it. Well, I eventually got it in the bin. I'm not really happy. It's too high, if you see what I mean. It's very heavy to put in. So I've got a plug in here. I forgot to mention I put a little plug in here now. That's the old temperature sensor. So now we've got this valve closed like that because we let all the air get out. The water's nice and warm, so when I get wet it's going to be a more pleasant experience. Right, here we go. Now I'm on 130 psi here, or should be. Of course I can't see the gauge, but let's put some pressure in it. Now we've got a little leak out of here where my gauge goes. We had a little leak where my gauge goes, so that's sorted that out. And as you can see there is no cracks at all. So what I've done is I've taken the valves out and I've blocked over the port here, and I was going to test it with water because obviously I'm not wet enough as it is, but I'm going to put the compressed air back on. I'm just going to put it on a little bit. I've got some soapy water here and we're going to look down here because listen, let's see if we can alter the camera a bit better. Here we go, this is on the rear. It is cracked. Can you see that? Can you see that? See if we can get a bit closer. Wait a minute. There we go, I might edit that bit out. Can you see that? That is spectacular. Look at it blowing through there, man. Look at that. That is absolutely knackered. People say, oh, you can weld that up. Well, no, you can't. Where are the other ones leaking? Yeah. Let me move the camera. This. Can you see it? It's cracked right underneath the valve here. That's spectacular, isn't it? I hope you can see what I'm seeing. Do you see it? Look at that. Let's have a look at another one. Look at that. Do you see it? Wow. Nothing. So I'm very pleased with that. So that means the next stage is to clean this up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out, and another reason is why it's warm. It'll dry out really quick so I can bang it in the sandblaster. The last thing you want to do is put a wet head in your sandblaster. It'll clog everything up, believe me. So there's no visible cracks in that. We're kind of happy. I'm pleased as punch as that, because if there was cracks in the injector holes, you know, not the injector but the glow plug holes, we would see some bubbles coming out of the bottom, and we're not seeing anything. I think somewhere I did a cross section of a cylinder head. Let me see and I'll show you a cross section where the injector goes, the glow plugs go, when I get it right. Right, that's the head out and dried up. So like me. So what we're going to do now is have a look at a cross section of a head here, and you can see where the glow plug goes in. So even though it's got a little tiny crack here, there's in no detriment because it's nowhere near a water jacket, it's well away from there, so they're not too bad. They're not too bad at all. But just whilst we're looking at this, let's do a tiny zoom. Yeah. You know when people say about, this is why I cut this head up, but you know when people say, oh, I'm going to port out the head, make it go faster. There isn't that much meat in there to grind out. And if you sort of want to take that shoulder off here where the valve guide goes, you're not going to have much material for that guide to sit in. So I've seen some companies that state that they port out, that, you know, they do gas flowing of the heads. I don't think they do because it's too risky. And of course the material isn't all that bad, and I don't think how you can improve it anymore. So that's why I won't port these out. I wouldn't even suggest it for you. So now we can pop this in the sandblaster. So that's the head after being in the sandblaster. There's still a little bit of carbon in here, a couple of places, but I'll get that out with the wet bead blaster because it's very difficult to see with a light, because these cast shadows, it's very difficult to see. I had a bit of a problem with my sandblaster because it wasn't working too well, and these were trapped in the bottom of the pickup, of the sand pickup. got them out, worked like a trooper. So now, bit of bead blasting. Right, so I got the head out of the bead blaster, cleaned it up quite a bit. It needs another go, but before I start wasting time, because we don't want to do that, I noticed that on the head, here, where can I point it? So there's a crack here, a little crack there, crack inside there. But I'm not too concerned about that. There's a little one developing there too. But I'm not too concerned. I've never known the seats drop out or anything like that of these. But what the old school way was of doing things, if you could put your finger in the crack, it was too deep. It's not really worth scrubbing the head, you know, getting rid of the head, but we've got a way of testing it. We're going to use some dye, we're going to use some WD-40, and we're going to use some baby powder or talc. Now what a job I had trying to find talc. I didn't know it was called baby powder. I don't usually buy it, but look at this. Could have a whole creche with this lot. So the head's cold. I'm going to warm it up a bit and then you'll see what I'm going to do. Right, this is the next day because I put this on top of my stove, but it was really cold yesterday, so I don't think it's going to warm up all that much, but better than being cold, because when it was in the wet bead blaster the water's very, very cold, so it chills it down a bit. So what we've got here again, this is just a little recap. This is a mix of WD-40 and some food dye. Now I'm putting food dye in it just to give it a bit of colour. So, but it doesn't mix obviously because it's like oil and water. But anyway, let's put a little bit on these bits here. Anyway it goes. Let it soak in. And the idea again is because we're using something coloured, it will stand out a little bit more on the next stage. So we'll let that soak in and see what happens. It's a very awkward stuff because it's like I say, it's oil and water and it's not really mixing. But let's give that a few minutes to soak and then we'll come back. Right, I've just given this about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm not sure if it's going to be all this successful. It used to work in the old days, but you can see, like I say, the dye doesn't mix very well. In fact, it doesn't mix at all. But we might get some results. We dry it off, then we use a little bit of talc. Well, that was interesting. I couldn't get the little sticker off here. Again, WD-40 dissolves the the adhesive. So let's put a little bit of talc on here, if it will. Oh, it smells nice. There's only one all working. Alright. What the heck's this thing here? Oh. Right. Phew. Well, it has worked, but you might not be able to see. Wish you were here. We can see the highlights of a crack here and a crack there, which we already knew there was there. We can see a little bit of the crack here. There's a crack between there and a crack between there. But these are all on, like I say, very thick parts. Well, that was an interesting experiment. At least I've got some talc. Say I've done it like that once before many years ago in the past, but like I say, to try and find the WD-40 is kind of difficult because it's soaked in, and what the idea is, the WD-40 and the colourant will soak into the crack, and then you will be able to see when you put powder on the top, the powder will stick to the remaining oil. Well, it sort of did. So I think what the next thing we'll do is we'll just check this. Oh, my hands are so soft. We'll check the surface. We'll just use my straight edge here. You wouldn't believe it, it's square. I have tested this against a proper straight edge at JP's shop. It's pretty good. So could we use that head? I would. I'd use it. But a lot of people are just putting new one on. Right, well, I'm going to just finish cleaning it off. What I'll do is I'll clean it off because there is still a little bit of carbon in some of these parts. It's very difficult to get out. So there's the head, all cleaned up, raring to go. Well, sort of raring to go. It looks kind of presentable, it's nice. The guides are all good, the seats are good. The only downside is it's got some little micro cracks in it, but I don't think that's a problem. There's a few little pits here and a few little scratches, but I think I can fill those with JB Weld and it'll come out quite nice. But you can see the surface is good, not a big deal. So why would I use this again? Because it passed a £130 pressure test. If there was any cracks in this area at all, it would bubble like crazy. But there is another reason. Well, in my last video we were bitching about the cost of parts and shipping. I just checked out how much a Brit part head would be. Now this is a genuine Land Rover head, this is why I wanted to save it. But how much a Brit part head would be from LR Direct shipped to Canada. It was $910, excuse me. Now, if I was to sell that and maybe put a couple of quid on it and get her up to $1,000. So if we can save somebody $1,000 by having a look at a head and make sure it's okay, then it's maybe worth it nowadays. I don't know, but it's a good salvage head to put on a truck. I'd guarantee it, I'm sure it'd be fine. But there is one big problem with 300 TDIs that you must be aware of, and why this happens, these little micro cracks. It runs too hot. These engines and cars are very old, the radiators are very old, and what I've seen from experience is that even though you have tubes in the radiator that go across from side to side, there's actually 3 tubes back to back in that radiator, you know, and then there's little fins interconnecting them. And the fins play a very important part because they dissipate the heat from the tube. If there's just a tube, there's very little surface area, so therefore it hasn't got a chance of cooling. Even though it doesn't leak, and even though the radiator isn't blocked, if those fins are damaged, it'll overheat. They look fine, but as I've done before, I've got the radiator, oops, dropped them on the bench or on the floor and shook them, and all the fins just go poof. You know, they are like 25, 30 years old. They don't last forever. But once you start playing around with tuning up, bigger turbos, bigger intercoolers, blah 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 blah, you're tweaking up the pumps, you know how you do, get a bit more power out of them. It's all going to add to more heat in one way or another. bad timing, ignition timing or diesel pump injection timing will usually raise the temperature. That's why it's very important to put an exhaust gas temperature reader to measure the temperature to make sure it's in a good safe zone. If it's too hot, again, it will lead to overheating of the head and cause cracks. So I don't know, it's a very strange subject. I don't know, but like I say, we're all trying to save a few pennies today, but if somebody needs a head, well, I've got one here. It's a bare head, but you could use your valves and stuff like that because the guides are good. It's just got a couple of micro cracks in, which you've seen, but it's cheap and cheerful, and it'll keep you on the road for a little bit longer, because if your head's cracked inside these ports, as we've seen before, the crack inside. We had one head that came from a so-called reconditioner, and 3 of them were cracked, and they never pressure tested it. So if you were to put that on your car, you would have had no end of problems with it. Alright, so this one's good. So there we go, saving a few quid. Yeah, I might just do this crack testing again when I can find some oil-based dye rather than the water-based one, because I don't know what I've done with it now. But the water-based one wasn't very effective. The theory works, and it does work very, very well if you're looking for cracks, but it just separated out and you couldn't see where we wanted to be. Anyway, that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. See ya.